Welcome back to Learning in Technology. This is Frank, and this video is part 2 of a 3-part series on setting up your classroom for remote teaching. This series is intended to help instructors get ready to teach their courses online. In part 1, we looked at the hardware needed for remote teaching. You can watch that video. The next video will speak to the process around synchronous and asynchronous teaching, plus some tips to make sure your class runs smoothly. And in this video, we'll get to our software setup, create a class, and get ready to run our first class. First, let's take a look at getting our system working properly. This involves making sure our sound and video hardware is communicating properly with our devices. Then we'll install Microsoft Teams, set up a basic classroom. Well, we won't cover every aspect of what Teams offers to us. We'll go through the process of creating a class. And don't worry, there's a lot of other videos in this channel that show more advanced team options. There'll be more in the future as well. For this video, we'll do a simple setup that's easy to understand and to do. Finally, we'll get a whiteboard working as a collaboration tool, do some screen sharing, and practice a little. Ready? Awesome. Let's go. So as I discussed in the previous video on hardware, I prefer to have an external sound microphone as opposed to using the internal microphone. Depends on your system. A lot of microphones are fine. The internal microphone is fine, but I find that having the external one really allows me to have better audio and allows me to avoid any issues that I may have around either audio that could be too quiet, or if I raise the volumes or levels on the microphone and winding up with interference by it picking up ambient sounds, or even the sound coming out of my speaker causing a bit of a feedback loop. So the cheap alternative, or the less expensive option, is to have something like a lavalier microphone. That's like this one here. I'll just use a color that stands out a bit more. And this one has a small plug, and that plug would go into the microphone port on a computer. So you'd have to plug it into the microphone port, and then it'll be recognized as being part of your sound system for the laptop or the desktop that you're using. Now this assumes that you have a microphone port on your system. Not uncommon, it's very common with a desktop, a little less common with a laptop system. Most laptops though will have a USB port. So the USB port gives me some options around audio. You can go with a little bit more expensive item like a Blue Yeti. This is a system I use, but it's got, a little bit more expensive system, really good audio, and that's mostly something I use for YouTube, but of course I use it for teaching as well, and it works out really well. I've got it on an arm, but that setup might be a little bit cost prohibitive. The sort of medium ground between the inexpensive lavalier microphone, which has the requirement for the port, is a USB port. This is called a Blue Snowflake. So this is a nice little unit that you have, and you can again move this around, move it closer to you. So you can even hang it on the laptop screen, although I usually have it sitting next to me on the desk if I'm using it in that type of environment. This is also portable, this is a little less portable. This is, of course, incredibly portable. So now that we've plugged it in, let's go and take a look at the software and making sure that we set our levels correctly on our input, which is going to be our microphone, and that we have our output to the correct audio of our system. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my sound settings. Now, if I go into my sound settings, well, I'll go in there. I actually get a fairly low level of control here. This is enough for the basic sounds. You can see that my output device is going to be my speakers or my headphones. This is, in my system, is my Realtek audio. You can see that I'm plugged in with an HDMI cable to a second monitor. So if I want to push the sound to the second monitor, then I would go to this high definition audio that's sitting on the second monitor. And you can see that it actually has a piece of software here. I'm using a piece of software called SparkoCam, which uses my web camera or uses as a digital SLR or a mirrorless camera as a webcam. So I want my output device to be the speakers on my laptop computer. If I go further down here, you can see that my input device I can use. In my case, I have my Blue Yeti microphone. I could also bring it into the port that's sitting on the side of my laptop, which would be my Realtek audio. I could also use the audio for the software that I'm using as a webcam. So many different choices in here, but I want to make sure I choose the right one. So if I was to plug in the small clip microphone, the lav microphone, then that one there would actually be the Realtek audio in my case. If I was to plug in a USB like the little snowball that I had there, then that one would show up here as microphone and it would actually say Blue Snowball. So if we go in there, in my case, I'm using the Yeti microphone, which is this one here. And that's the one that I'm going to be using for the audio. Now to test the microphone, you notice as I'm talking, you can see that I've got a little bar moving here, which indicates that my microphone is picking up my voice. If I bring it closer, you can see that my voice is really loud here. And we'll see how that shows up in the audio actually. Just occurs to me that I'm recording, so that may have been very loud. But I'll move it to a distance where I'm getting about halfway of the clip. If I want to, I can go into managing my sound devices. And under here, you can again see what my output device choices are. You can see what my input choices are. And if I go back, so I'll just go back here, you can go in and you can go into the sound control panel. This is where I'm going to get even more control over my sound. And this is quite useful because what I can do here is I can go into my recording. I can see here that right now I'm hitting the microphone with the SparkoCam video, which is the software I'm using to record, and the microphone for the Yeti are both giving me this bar that's showing what's happening. If I click on the microphone for the Yeti and go into properties, this is going to allow me, I could rename it from microphone to Yeti or whatever I'd like to. I can disable the device, which I don't want to do. I'm not going to be listening on the device because you don't listen through a microphone. Now, as a bit of a gotcha, when you first plug in sometimes these Yeti microphones especially, they actually will install the software and they will come up as a speaker. And all of a sudden you'll lose your audio output and you'll be like, where's my speaker? You have to make sure you go in here and don't have your microphone set up as your speaker. It's input, not output. If I go into the levels, here's where I can adjust the levels. So if I find that I'm getting too much peaks and clips, which means that I'm talking and all of a sudden I'm so loud that it actually clips or makes the audio sound bad, then what I can do is adjust the level down a little bit. Most of the time I find with students, if I go too low, then what happens is people can't hear me when I'm trying to teach. So I usually put it up a little bit higher, but if you're having experiences where students say we can't hear you and they've turned up the volume on their computer, then it's maybe potentially your microphone that's the problem. That means that your level, it could be not close enough to you, or it could be that you have not come in here and set the level correctly. So I'll go ahead and say okay to that. You can cancel that as well. Now, if you go in, you can go into managing your sound devices. I showed you there, and there's even advanced options in here where you can really go into something. Again, I'm choosing what I'm using for recording. Can choose. Normally what I'll do is I'll keep everything to just use the default. So if I change it in Windows, it'll automatically go to the default. You can see that I've got a few things that I've set specifically to the speakers are going to be my speakers of my laptop, and my microphone is going to be this Blue Yeti that I've shown you. Could just as easily be the lav mic, could just as easily be the little snowball mic that I showed you as well. So now that we've plugged it in and we've set the levels correctly, let's go ahead and take a look at setting up a class. Then we're also going to make sure that our audio is working in the class by creating a fake little meeting, recording that meeting, and playing that meeting back to us. Okay, so let's begin with that. So I'm going to close down the whiteboard for now. We'll come back to that as another piece of software. I'm going to go into Microsoft Teams, and underneath Microsoft Teams, I'm going to go into a team that I created for myself called Frank's Amazing Classroom. Now, I highly recommend that you create a small little team that you're the only student of, and you can use this as a sandbox to do different types of testing and to see if everything's working without cluttering up your actual classrooms with any type of things that you don't really want the students to see, or little test videos, those types of things. Now, how did I create Frank's Amazing Classroom? Well, if I go back to the All Teams, you'll see I have a bunch of different teams that I'm a member of. So let's just pretend that I'm brand new. I've never set up a team before, and I want to start from the very, very beginning. Okay, so let's start from the very, very beginning. I'm a brand new instructor. My school has Office 365. I have access to Microsoft Teams, but I haven't done anything yet. So let's pretend we're in that situation. So I'll open up a browser, and when I open up the browser, I'm going to go to Microsoft.com. So that's the Microsoft website, but I'm going to go either to office.microsoft.com, or I can just go to teams.microsoft.com. And what will happen is my IT department will have given me a login credentials for my Microsoft account. It's the same place I would go to get my productivity applications such as PowerPoint or Word or any of those applications. And you'll notice that I have two choices. I can use the Windows app or I can use the web app and just go through a web interface. Now, going just through a web interface is something that students can do if they have devices that aren't particularly powerful, maybe a tablet or even on their phone, although there's an app on the phone and on iPads that you can download. It really is sort of a shortcut to the web interface. But if I go in and I choose the Windows app, this will actually allow me to download the Windows app. So I'm downloading the Teams app, which is an executable that I can then install onto my system. Now, to install on my system, once it's finished downloading, what I'll do is I'll go in, and I always like to say show it in the folder. And then what I do is I'll right-click on Teams and I'll say Run as Administrator to ensure that I'm not stopped with any issues around permissions and such. So you can go on there, and I've already installed it. It's a typical install, just install the application. Once you've installed the application, if you go to your window here and you go into Teams, you can scroll down, it's underneath Microsoft Teams. And what I like to do is just right-click, and I like to make sure that I pin it to the Start menu, or what I really like to do is pin it to the taskbar. So you can see I've already done this, and down below here, I have Teams on the taskbar, and I can just click and launch Teams. This gives me the Teams application. Now to create a new team, which is what I want to do, and I already talked to you about how I created Frank's Amazing Classroom, but I'm going to create a new one from scratch. I would do this to create a new class. I would do this to create a new sandbox for me to play with. So I'm going to go in and either join or create a team. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new team, and the team is going to be a class. So I'll go in and create a class, and I'm going to call this Frank's Demo Class. And I can give it a description. Now, if just a sandbox. Now, obviously, if this was a real class for students, I could describe my class a little bit more. I would give it a meaningful name. I'll say next to this. And then once I create this team, I can put students in that are members of my organization. I can either find them within my organizational directory if my IT department has set that up, or what I can do is I can put in their email addresses and invite them in that way as well. I can also invite other teachers and or administrators into this class, and I do recommend that so that if something should happen where you need somebody to come in and take over your class, or if somebody needs to come in and help you, you'll have people that can do that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll add an administrator as a teacher, and then they'll be responsible for coming in and adding students that have registered for this class. So in my case, I'm just going to skip it. I'm going to have a class of 1, which will just be me. But I'll go ahead and now I have a class in here. I don't really like, just the FD for Frank's class, Frank's demo class. So I'm going to go ahead and click the little edit button here, which is a little pencil. And I'm just going to put something a little bit more fun. I can upload my own image for the class. That's sometimes fun to do as well. So if I go into my pictures in here, and I'll just choose a background image, and I'll choose an igloo. So I'll just put that image up there. And it's nice and warm today, so when I'm filming this, so igloos aren't really applicable. But in every winter, I build an igloo in my front yard because I'm in Canada. It's just something we do. Nobody does it. I just do it. Some people do. Okay, so if I go in here, it's Frank's Demos class. You'll notice I have a general channel. Now, occasionally what I'll do is I'll create a number of different channels. So let's say with my class, I'll add a channel in here for, tutorials, and I'm just going to do them quickly, but again, I can choose whether they're accessible to everybody, whether they're just private, only to specific groups of people, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a tutorial channel as a demonstration, but I can add all different channels in here for different areas of my classroom. So I usually like to have a tutorial area. I'll sometimes create 2 or 3 group rooms. So I'll call it group 1, group 2, group 3. And then as we're working in the class, I'll say, okay, you students go into group 1, do some work. You guys go into group 2. And I can then visit these different channels and help students as they're doing group work and collaborating with each other. That's another video for another time. We're just setting up a basic class here. You'll also see that underneath the general here, I can set up a class, I can upload class materials, and I can go and even find additional help and training beyond the videos that I create. There's a lot of other people that create videos, and you never know which one's going to resonate with you and help you learn best. Hopefully mine. But if Microsoft has little ones on little tips and stuff like that, I'm kind of going end to end for you. Notice that I have files, class notebooks, assignments, and grades, and I have created some videos where I've talked about this. For this video, I'm keeping it very simple. I'm not going to go into depth. I've just created a simple classroom. Now going back to the audio setup, I want to make sure my audio is working. So one of the things I'll do very early on is down below here, I'll start a little meeting, and I'll call this audio test. And what I'll do with audio test is I'll set up a meeting. And in this meeting, if I go to the ellipse here, I click on there, you'll notice I can go into my device settings. And when I click on here, you'll notice that my speaker is my Realtek speaker, which I showed you in the sound settings. And you'll notice that my microphone is the Yeti microphone. And you'll notice that I'm getting some levels in here without hitting the end too much. If I went really close to the microphone, then it might hit the end. But the point is that it's showing the microphone here. You'll notice that my camera is using whatever video. In my case, I'm using my external video. I could, if I wanted to, use my integrated webcam. And you can see that that's just another view. But I prefer to use that digital SLR that I'm using. I use it for so many other things. I'm a photographer. It's a hobby. So I have it handy. So I got the software and the cable. Definitely, I like the better quality video, but it's not necessary. So now that I've gone in, I'm going in, I can test the audio. You can see my camera's on. I can mute my camera. My audio, I can mute my audio. I can go in and I can share the meeting with others. I'm just going to go in right now and I'm going to start recording the meeting. So I'm going to go in here and start recording. And I'm going to just talk, and maybe I'll put my video on, make sure my video is working, wave and test, talk and test, whatever I'm doing. And then I'm going to stop recording. And I'll stop the recording and I'll mute my video just so we don't have to see double video. And what's going to happen is I'll end the call by hanging up. And now that I've hung up, you'll notice that I had this recording in here and it was fine. And it's going to go in and start processing that video and putting it into Microsoft Stream. Then what I'll be able to do is replay that video back to myself and listen to the audio quality and look at the video quality so I can make any adjustments to my system and make sure I'm working before I begin teaching. Okay, so I just paused the video there for a little bit and allowed the stream recording to complete. Now I can go in. When I click it, it's a little 6-second meeting. Let's see if it worked. So it'll load it from stream. Whatever I'm doing, and then I'm going to stop recording. And so as you can see, what happened was my audio worked, my video worked, and that's also a great way to record your lectures for those students that can't be there. In the next video of this series, I'm going to talk about synchronous versus asynchronous learning and how we have to adjust our class because not all of our students will have full-time access to hardware. They may have to share it with siblings. So if we record some of our lectures and we have assignments that they can work on outside of class, that's a way of teaching without necessarily forcing them to be in a specific time at a specific place. Okay, so I actually created another meeting while I was waiting for that to process. So we can create a meeting, and underneath the meeting, what we can do is I'll just call this class test. So I'm creating a meeting and I'm meeting now. And one of the things we can do, I'm going to mute the video on this one. We still have the video that I have here, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a share. And if I have any applications running, I can share those applications to my audience. One of the applications that I do like working with quite a bit is the Microsoft Whiteboard. And I do like downloading the application. I've done a whole video on the Microsoft Whiteboard, so I'm not going to reiterate everything about it. You can watch that video. But what I do want to show you here is that in Microsoft Teams, once I launch that application, let me go back to sharing. If I go into sharing, one of the things I can do is share that whiteboard. So now I'm presenting this whiteboard to everybody in the meeting. And then you'll notice that the meeting window is minimized. I actually like to double click it and bring it back up again. And I usually will put this meeting on one monitor, and then I'll have the application I'm working with on my first monitor, if that's possible. And the reason for that is I can keep my chat window here. And so I have my meeting chat, and then I can work here on the whiteboard using my stylus, using my iPad stylus, and I have a video on that, or using a Wacom tablet, whatever it may be, or even if I want to use my mouse, if you're okay with that. And then what I can do is I can lecture, but because I have this maximized on another screen, what I can do is I can see if somebody's chatting or if they put up their hand, so on and so forth. When I'm done, I can simply go in and I can actually stop sharing. Now the students do not see that application, and I can end the meeting or whatever I need to do. Now, when I'm sharing, it's important to know I can share the application, which means nothing else gets seen except that application screen, or I can share my entire screen, but that does mean that they'll see everything on my screen. So if I open up a meeting or if I'm chatting with somebody privately, they'll actually see that. So a lot of times it's better just to share out that application itself. You also may have noticed that there was a built-in whiteboard, and I discussed that in my whiteboard video, that I prefer to use the full version application and share it out rather than use the built-in Teams version of whiteboard. Okay, so now that's all we need to do to have a very basic classroom set up. We'll talk a little bit about how to teach a class, and we'll sort of look in our next video about a fictitious little class where I'll go in and I'll teach a small subject to you using all of these tools from A to Z so that you can see me running a class for you, my student, in that class. Thank you so much for watching once again. I hope you found this video useful. Sorry that it was a little bit longer than some of my other videos, but there was a lot to cover. You can rewind and you can watch those sections that are applicable to you. You can click subscribe. You can click like if it was useful. If you click subscribe, you'll get notified, or you'll see new videos coming out. If you hit the alarm bell, then or the notification bell, it's not really an alarm, notification bell, you'll get those notifications as new videos come out. And if you like, you can share this video with others that might find it useful. Now, the most important thing, as I've said many times, is to go down into the comments, put a comment in there if there's something you want to see or require clarification on. I'm here to help you. So I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching. Here's some other videos you can watch, and we'll talk to you in the next video where I'll use what we've done here to teach a class from beginning to end. Thank you very much.